Hello and welcome to this short presentation on why your talent will sabotage your agile efforts. Now that sounds rather definite there, doesn't it, when I say will sabotage? Well, it won't always, but I've seen it happen a fair amount of times now to be convinced that this is rather a theme in organisations, especially where you have developers who tend to rule the roost. Now just let me explain something very briefly. Having been a developer myself in the past, I can say that I'm not anti-developers. In fact, I'm very pro-developers, and I'm always on the lookout for helping build developers who are of a talented ilk, but not in the same way that other people might think. So let's move on here and talk about exactly what it is your talent will end up doing if you allow them to in your organisation. So it won't escape many of you out there that there is this thing called a war on talent out there, or a war for talent. But you know what? I personally believe that this whole talent movement is rather overrated. Because if we honestly believe that, well, let's ask ourselves first, what do we mean by talent? Well, talent here as a definition is a natural aptitude or skill. How many people would you say are naturally talented at this particular thing called, say, coding or developing or analysing or whatever you're hiring your talent for? How many people have that natural ability? Well, maybe not that many, which leads us to a scarcity mentality, that there's not many of these people out there, and what we've got to do as this particular organisation is grab all the best talent we possibly can, and that's going to make us a leading organisation. Well, don't buy that, I really don't. And one of the things I've certainly observed is that actually, like Green and Colvin will tell you, talent actually comes from mastery or deliberate practice. The idea that practice makes perfect over a long period of time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that when you leave university, just because you were good at coding in university, is going to make you a natural genius when you walk into the work. Again, I've seen these sorts of mindsets being employed by both managers and leaders in organisations who tend to put their talent on a pedestal. And what happens is it'll come round and it'll bite them in the arse in the end. So how does this talent come about then sabotaging us? And well, let me explain it in this way for you. If you were to look at Carol Dweck's work, she has been one of the forerunners who talks about these two different types of mindsets as part of her research. And I won't go into all the whys and wherefores, but there's some references at the end of this little presentation that you can look up for yourself. And she talks about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Now, if we understand the fixed mindset and how people in organisations who work from a fixed mindset, these are the people who are actually going to sabotage your efforts. So I'm all for talent, inverted commas, that have a growth mindset, because they actually have a very, very different way of looking about things and looking at things. Fixed mindset, as we can see here, has fixed abilities, i.e. talent, that they actually believe that they only have a certain amount of intelligence, but their intelligence is large enough, larger than other people. So it leads to a sense of arrogance. This fixed abilities as well, they tend to think that it's the same for everyone, that if everyone has got a certain amount of intelligence, that actually won't be writ large in other people. So hence they would always play games of positioning, putting themselves above other people because they believe they have more talent than somebody else. And again, we'll talk about this in a little while, about how sometimes leaders pander to by putting their talent up on a pedestal, and it just reinforces this mindset of arrogance. The fixed mindset individual avoids challenges. You see, they don't want challenges, they want to avoid challenges, because what happens is when a challenge comes up and faces them, what happens if they fail in that challenge? So they avoid risk and failure, because what that will mean is it sort of knocks their confidence, it dents them a little bit, and they don't like to have that challenge. So hence what they will do is they will avoid challenge, they'll avoid risk and failure, because these things aren't healthy for them. They're things that put them on uneven footing. So what they'll tend to do is they'll tend to run away from. They'll tend to be rather avoidant. And that's definitely my experience in organisations as I've come across talent, and when I've confronted talent because of some of their dysfunctional people skills that these people have, they tend to run in the opposite direction, tend to go away and hide, or tell their managers that they don't want to work with me because, well, Mark's making me feel bad about myself. Well, that's not me that's making you feel bad about yourself, my friend, that's you. And if they have to put in more effort, then I'm not talented. See, what there's this misconception is that people think that if you're talented, you don't have to put in effort. Well, that's just not true at all. As we said earlier, the idea of becoming talented is because you've put in effort. I've got to where I am today, not because I'm extremely talented, although I believe I am in certain areas, but I've had to work at what I do. This just hasn't come to me naturally, all these skills down through the years that I've evolved over time. So I've had to actually put some work in. And these people don't want to put work in. They tend towards victimhood, and there's this trap that we call the hopeless, helpless, worthless trap. They don't want to be challenged. They'll go away and run off in the corner, and then they collapse in a heap, and they avoid and defend against failure. So look, that's the mindset of the, I want to call them the less than talented individual, although they would have been put on the pedestal quite often in childhood, by their parents telling them that they've been, that they are wonderfully talented, that they've got huge amounts of intelligence, and of course they don't need to really try at doing anything. Whereas the growth mindset, as you can see here, is rather different. It provides a different set of things for us to think about. They have abilities which grow like muscles. This is about continually working at things. They love challenges. They recognize that learning comes from failure, and effort doesn't feel like effort as the joy of learning takes over. I mean, this is the beauty about working with people who have a growth mindset, because they don't actually mind when things go wrong, because that's actually an opportunity to go fix and make things different. And a mindset of mastery that takes responsibility. These people take responsibility. They don't do victimhood like your other people do. They'll actually take responsibility for what they think is the things that they need to do. They become resilient as well in the face of failure. They don't collapse in a heap like their other counterparts. So let me just briefly give you a brief bit of my experience, personal experience that I've had in organisations. And I love the Dilbert cartoon here, because it does remind me so much, of certain individuals and certain organisations. Because what has happened in the past is that I've been asked to come in to work with organisations to help the teams become more agile. So the leaders will ask me to come in and to do what you might call a drains up. Let's assess the team, see where they are, and let's identify about how we can move forward, how we can help the team become more agile. Now look, quite often it's the environment in which the team has been asked to work in that can be the big issue. But as I say, quite often, and sometimes, maybe not so often, but a fair enough amount of times to make you think that there's a theme here, there will be individuals who will get in the way of success, just like Big Dan here, who will prevent our success. And how do they do that? Well, what tends to happen, as I said earlier, I've worked in organisations where I've been asked to come in and help and identify what the issues are. And then when I give back the report to leaders about, well, look, here's the things that are going wrong for the team. Here are the things that need to be fixed. Here's what needs to be sorted. Quite often, I might not hear the teams overtly say this, but it's very easy for me to pick up on individuals who are the problem individuals. And I say problem inverted commas, i.e. these people who have the fixed mindset, the ones who will run in the opposite direction. And quite often what will happen at the point when I'm making recommendations to the leadership that actually what needs to happen here is either you need to move people off the project and get them on to doing something else, or you need to actually give them some remedial coaching that helps them to start to change their mindset so they can have more of that flexible and adaptable growth mindset that Dweck refers to, rather than the fixed one. Because mindset is malleable. Mindset can be changed. It doesn't have to stay fixed. But what will tend to happen is, if it's the talent that I'm referring to and the leaders don't like what they're hearing, what they will say is, well, I can't really fire him. I can't move him off onto another thing. I can't make her do something else. But yes, you can, and yes, you need to. Because if you don't, I promise you, it's going to sabotage you. So, how does then the talent sabotage efforts? Well, here's just a couple of things, or a few things for you to think about, because this is what they do. If the leaders have put talent on a pedestal and pander to them, the leaders set themselves up for failure, because you're putting them above everyone else, which gives them a sense of arrogance, as we talk about further on in the slide there. The talent develop entitlement issues, where they feel everyone owes them a living. It's them that should be listened to. But what tends to be happening is they won't be told, and they can't be told by people, because their arrogance is so far ahead above everyone else. That they are the ones who are feeling that that no one can tell them, because they're the talented ones. They know. And quite often, these are the people who will reveal themselves to me in my interviews in organisations, when they say things to me like, yeah, but people don't listen to me. They ought to listen to me, because if they were to listen to me, everything else around here would be perfectly fine. It's the fact that they're not listening to me because I am so talented. That's what comes across in the attitude of people who are disrupting and getting in the way of teams. So what do we do then with that? So what's the antidote? Well, inspirational leadership is the antidote at the end of the day. What we're going to ask leaders to do is to stop telling people how talented they are, both covertly and overtly. Now, I know that sounds like a bit of an opposite thing to do, because yes, you do want to praise people up and you do want to tell them how good they are. But rather than telling them how talented they are, i.e. recognizing them for their intelligence, which Carol Dweck says is not a good thing to do, it just reinforces the fixed mindset. So instead, recognize effort and commitment instead. Stop focusing on building individuals and instead look towards building team spirit. And on top of that, stop promoting gifted individuals to becoming Scrum Masters. Now, by this I mean your lead developers. Quite often what tends to happen when we run Agile in organisations, it tends to be that the lead developer gets promoted, or the lead analyst or lead someone gets promoted to being the Scrum Master, which means they're now not doing their role as they ought to, and in which case they tend to rail against that and say, no, well, I'm going to do the lead developer role and be the Scrum Master as well. That just doesn't work. So there's a whole bunch of other reasons why it doesn't work, and happy to share with anyone if they want to find out more. But instead, educate people on what a Scrum Master really is, a servant leader. It's not someone who tells people what to do, because the lead developer, what they tend to do is they tend to be rather fearful that when a Scrum Master comes in to, in inverted commas, run the team, they fear that they're going to be told what to do. And they don't want to be second fiddle to anyone. They want to be the person in charge. But then again, that's the misunderstanding exactly what the role of the Scrum Master is. Yeah, and that's okay. It just takes a little bit of education, sitting down and listening for a little while, rather than being arrogant, and thinking that you know everything about everything, and therefore I'm not going to listen to what anyone tells me, which is exactly the fixed mindset. Don't reward people with power. Instead, recognize them for their skills instead. In other words, you might want to reward them for their skills, reward them for the skills of being a lead developer and doing the best to bring the developmental skills of the rest of the team on as well, rather than putting them in a position of power that they think is a powerful position and then abusing that. That's just not going to work. So the antidote to that in general is to hire seasoned Scrum Masters who know how to use and work with that team dynamic. And don't be afraid to fire the talent when their egos are out of whack, because honestly, that's going to be one big thing that you really ought to do. Leaders often shy away from this because they feel that they can't, whereas they actually do need to. It is the one thing that they need to do, is to be courageous enough to actually say, do you know what? The good of the team is better than now having talented individuals, who will stand out head and shoulders above, because they will get in the way of the team dynamic. References there for you to look at. Please feel free to go and look at them. I'll put some links at the end of the presentation here for you to go and be able to click on. and hopefully that will make life easier for you. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the very near future.